Hi. I think we can start. It's an honor for me to introduce the winner of the Antonio Zampolli Prize, but I would say also that it's a pleasure to introduce an old friend of mine. Nizar Habash is a Palestinian-American full professor of computer science at York University Abu Dhabi and a consulting professor at Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. He's also the founding director of the NYU Abu Dhabi Camel Lab, which specializes in Arabic NLP. Before joining New York University Abu Dhabi in 2014, he was a research scientist at Columbia University Center for Computational Learning Systems, where he co-founded CADIM, Columbia Arabic Dialect Modeling Group, with Mona Diab and Owen Rambo. Owen may be here. He received his PhD in computer science from the University of Maryland, College Park in 2003. He has 2 bachelor degrees, one in computer engineering and one in linguistics and languages, both from Old Dominion University in '97. Professor Habash specializes in Arabic natural language processing and computational linguistics. His research includes extensive work on machine translation, morphological analysis and disambiguation, syntactic parsing, and general computational modeling of Arabic and its dialects. His contribution include developing over 20 open source enabling technology tools and over 30 novel data sets to support Arabic NLP. Nizar has been a principal investigator or co-investigator on over 25 research grants, and he has over 280 publications, including a book entitled Introduction to Arabic Natural Language Processing. In addition, among people who published at LREC, he has the largest number of papers, 34, in the last 5 LRECs from 2014 until 22. And this was discovered by Joseph Mariani, who is there, when together we submitted an evaluation of LREC to the core Australian conference ranking. So maybe it is because of you that LREC went up of a level. Nizar has been a leader in the Arabic NLP community, in particular, starting the series of workshops on Arabic NLP in 2014. And these workshops has evolved into the Arabic NLP conference, collocating this year with ACL for its 2nd edition. He is the founding and current president of the ACL SIG Arab, Special Interest Group in Arabic NLP. Finally, Nizar is the inaugural recipient of the 2022 award of the King Salman Academy for Arabic Language for individuals who contributed to Arabic language computerization and technology. It's impressive, but there is more, something that no one knew or few people knew. In addition to all of this, some of us learned recently that his interests in language go beyond the linguistic and computational to the artistic sphere. And as I understand, we may hear about some of this today. So, Nizar, thank you.
Thank you very much. know if this, maybe the slides should go up, but thank you, Nicoletta, for this very generous introduction. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I will do my best to not keep you far away from lunch. I know this is probably, maybe this is the next worst time. After lunch, I would have lost you completely, so I'm lucky to get you before lunch. So as Nicoletta said, so I will be presenting my talk with about 4 different aspects of myself as I relate to language in general, and hopefully that will give you a sense of the journey that I had coming here. But first, I would like to put a few words of thanks, particularly to my family, without whom, most of my success would not have existed. My mom, my dad, and also my partner, who I'm very thankful for the patience that I am afforded. Also, all my amazing academic mentors, from Professor Ilkari, who basically was the person who told me about computational linguistics as an undergrad. I did not even know that that was even a possibility. To, of course, my academic mother, Professor Bonnie Dorr, for whom I'm eternally grateful, and all the wonderful academic aunts and uncles in the community who I was, greatly benefiting from all of their support. My colleagues, all those papers did not get written by themselves. We have so many collaborations, and I'm just very happy to have collaborated with all the people I worked with. And of course, the students and research assistants without whom nothing happens. They are really the heart of everything in this process. And then finally, to all of you, the incredible community that I feel has become a home academically for me for the last 27 years. I thank you very much. And the theme that I follow throughout this talk is a theme of language and home. I'm quoting Rumi, who says, all language is a longing for home. I think he meant something a lot deeper than I'm interpreting, but I'm going to go with my reading poetically of it, of the relationship between language and home. All of you found a home in LREC-COLING and all the other NLP conferences because of your interest in language to start with. Something brought you here. And each one of us has their own independent journey. I hope to allow me to share with you my own particular unique journey that got me here. So, as many of you know, I am Palestinian. I was born 25 years after the Nakba, and by about age 9, I lived through a war that was quite brutal in 1982 in Lebanon. And in that war, as a child, I had learned already Arabic and English in schools, but I realized the importance of language and dialectal differences when I basically became a refugee separated from my own family during the war, who I was sent away basically so that I survived. So that basically got me introduced to the idea of language as home, as identity, being connected together. It's really what got me interested in linguistics and languages to start with. That was the starting point. So it's all tied up in my mind. Thankfully, my parents did survive. They came out safe, thank God. Being Palestinians, the curse and the blessing in some odd way is having to live in all over the world. So in my own particular story, I ended up, between Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Tunisia, and oddly the Soviet Union. My first introduction to Russian was basically in Moscow. All of this opened up my mind to the idea of what is language home, and how do we actually, when you get a new language, do you get a new home? How does that expand your mind? And then as a precocious 15-year-old, I thought, oh, what if I imagine a language and then I'm imagining a home? I can create languages. And that was my first attempt in my teenage years to create my first Conlang and Conworld. Oddly, a little island called Salaman, which, if you can imagine, the Arabic word for peace is embedded in the name of it, where it had its own language. I'll talk a little bit about it later. But this was actually the seed, again, of me thinking, oh, that's an interesting relationship we have with language. Constructing it, working with it. We're not just subjects to it, we're co-makers of it. I know I sound a little bit philosophical, and at the time, I thought I was a genius who nobody has ever created a language before me, and then somebody pointed to Esperanto, and I was disappointed. Don't mind you, in those days, there was no internet, right? I had no idea what was going on. That, of course, encouraged me to when I went to university to study linguistics to kind of understand more on a deeper level, and that kind of became my academic home journey. I did computer engineering and linguistics, as Nicoletta said, 2 degrees at the same time, 6 years. I was pickled by the time I was done with the program, but it was absolutely worth it. It made the base of a wonderful career and life, to be honest. And then after that, I went to University of Maryland and did computer science in computational linguistics. I worked on machine translation. Many people assume I worked on Arabic. I actually didn't. My PhD was on Spanish and Chinese translation because that was the funding that was available. And it has been wonderful. I mean, it was wonderful that I worked on these languages to have the opportunity, even though my heart was still set on working on Arabic. So all of you who are having to work on languages that is not your pick, hang in there. There is a lot to learn. There's a lot to actually learn and develop from working on any other language in the space. Then I had this wonderful opportunity with my colleague Owen Rambo, who was my postdoc advisor, who basically invited me to co-join on working on a proposal. Owen, interestingly, was interested in working on dialects, not Arabic, German, and he was recommended that maybe you should consider Arabic, and he had known me from conferences. That's why we come to conferences, and basically said, oh, you know, what do you know about Arabic dialects? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you, sit down, you know. So, and that was the beginning of the last 20 years' wonderful journey, frankly. I owe him a lot for starting this, so thank you, Owen. And in Colombia, we started with him and Mona Diab, the Colombia Arabic Dialect Modeling Group, or CADM, and for about 10 years, we were building lots of resources to study and model Arabic language and Arabic dialects, which at that point was not really as popular to work on. About 10 years ago, I returned home in a way to the Middle East, although I had never been to the UAE before I went there, and now it had become, Abu Dhabi has become home for me. And I started the CAML lab, or the Computational Approaches to Modeling Language lab. Funny story about the name, because people ask. So I had a dramatic colleague who was basically giving me warning signs. So why are you going to the Middle East? Your research will be covered in the desert sands, he said. And I thought it was a bit dramatic, and my reaction was, like, I need a camel then to help me through this journey. That was kind of the beginning of the joke that ended up being the name of the lab. It's actually a pun in Arabic. Camel means perfect or complete in Arabic. That's not the word we actually use for the animal. And from the beginning of the time of moving to Abu Dhabi, I was very interested in also building the larger community of people working on Arabic NLP. I felt we were so desperate in many different countries, not always coordinating with each other, different attempts by many people who want to, create communities, but they were not actually working together and ended up working against each other. That effort for almost 10 years actually led at the end to the creation of the ACL SIG Arab, which is interested in Arabic NLP and is basically the host of a couple of workshops and a conference. So if you're interested in Arabic NLP in any level, please join our SIG. And so of course, I'm talking a lot about Arabic, and you say, but isn't large language models will work for any language. Why should I care, right? Okay, so maybe. But let me tell you why Arabic NLP is interesting. So this is a moment I have you as a captive audience. If you know a couple of things about Arabic, maybe this will be useful. Arabic, beside the obvious of being a world language, it's one of the 10 most used among the 10 most used languages in the world. It has the national language for over 400 million people and the liturgical language for about 2 billion Muslims. One of the 6 official languages in the UN. But that's not just enough. It's also really interesting from a linguistic point of view and a computational modeling point of view, because it has a lot of challenges that none of them are unique to Arabic, but when they all come together, they create a magic that is really problematic. And among these, I have this list of the ambiguous orthography, morphological richness, dialectal variation, and noisy input. Easy to remember as the acronym DAM. So if you ever wonder, let's say a few things about each. So orthographic ambiguity is the fact that Arabic is written with optional diacritics. Only 2% of the words also are diacritized, which means there is rampant ambiguity. Words could have up to 7 pronunciations and 3 core meanings. This particular example could mean infatuated, and for an eye, and cursed. It's just nothing connected with each other. You have to look at the context very carefully to understand what's going on. Also, Arabic is morphologically rich. Many languages are. Arabic pushes it one level, perhaps, because it also has a lot of clitics in addition to features like gender, number, person, case, state, mood, voice, all piled in. So you may end up with thousands of forms of the verbs compared to, let's say, English, which have 6 maybe, and Chinese 1. They win the prize. So Arabic has more complexity in that sense. This affects tokenization for large language models, etc. I'm not sure what's happening with the... Okay, thank you. I'll continue. And then, of course, dialectal variations. So you may know Arabic is not one thing. There's the classical form, or the Quranic form, if you may, the modern standard form, and then different dialects. And the beauty of it is that they all are coexisting together. A person, a Muslim Arab person, might pray in the Quranic form, the classical form, read the news in the standard form, and then they talk to their family or watch TV or chat with buddies on social media in the dialectal form. And just to give a taste, no pun intended since I'm using a tomato, of what we're talking about, you know, tomato, in Arabic, that's about a dozen different forms, in fact. I'm not showing them all. Also, Arabic has a notorious spelling inconsistency, the way it's used in social media. About 30% of the words have errors. And when it comes to the dialects, we cannot even define what an error is because there is no official standards. So for example, we found one particular word with 27 different spellings, not counting all the other spellings that may actually be romanizations of that word, right? So all of this basically ties into this kind of complexity. The Camel Lab, we basically made it our mission to try to produce solutions to all of these issues in the terms of infrastructure, enabling technologies, and resources. And here I just want to thank the Cameliers, which is what we call our team. If you're a Camelier, you're always a Camelier. And I'm going to make the slides available for the website so you can have them all because I have lots of examples of things. I just want to maybe pitch a couple of cases of particular resources. Camel Tools is our open source Python toolkit for Arabic language processing support. If you want a cool demo to play with, it's called Camelira, that does automatic diacritization and disambiguation. We created a Camel tree bank, which is basically a multi-genre Arabic tree bank, first of its kind, that actually bridges from pre-Islamic poetry all the way to social media today with the samples across time and space, so-called. We have projects called Madar, which we generated for the first time, again, parallel data in 25 different city dialects across the Arab world. I was very happy to be part of the creation of the Gumar corpus, which is 100 million words of Gulf Arabic. Actually, surprisingly, it's almost 1,000+ novels written informally by mostly women writers in the Gulf region, with a lot of interesting context, actually, beyond the linguistic, kind of also sociolinguistics, potentially. We have projects working on Arabic readability with resources. Every single one of these things that I'm mentioning is open source and public. So if you have students who are interested in Arabic NLP, send them in our direction. Another one is an Arabic parallel gender tree bank, which was, I believe, the first of its kind to have parallel examples in both grammatical genders in Arabic. And then we used it to benchmark gender bias in machine translation and correct gender bias in machine translation. Another version, another kind of effort is Egyptian Arabic English code switching corpus, which actually models how people actually speak today in normal situations in Egyptian where they switch between different forms of Arabic. And then I'll end with a couple more. This project was Meknuna is a large open Palestinian Arabic lexicon, also the first open Palestinian lexicon. I was very happy to develop this with a PhD students from Oxford University, Shahid Abbas. And finally, I mentioned one of our systems called Toya, which is basically time offset interaction application. We designed it to actually be multilingual and work between Arabic and other languages also. Again, check it out if it's of any interest. So now that I've talked to you about my academic journey and the research and the projects that I do, I'm going to switch to the second part of the presentation, which is more about new language, imagining a language, and I'll talk to you about my Conlang art practice and teaching. So this is the thing that I do privately in the past, although I've actually given lectures on it at different universities, and I've even taught lectures in visual art design courses using this kind of material. So I'll talk about two projects, and then I'm going to talk about how I integrated this kind of work within my teaching, actually, at the York University Abu Dhabi. So the first one is called Delasan, and this is my first Conlang, almost 30 years old at this point when it was started. And it has its own writing system. This is the thing that I was saying earlier. I thought I was creating something that nobody had ever done. There's a book with complete dictionary and translations, and it was a very interesting exercise in also learning how to design fonts and how to work with them. It actually helped me with a lot of my own computational work later on, because I was kind of interested in making it work, and now I get to map that. The writing system is a little bit inspired by Japanese in some ways, but much, much, much simpler than Japanese, which has been quite hard to learn. I'm going to read an example here from it. This is from a poem. I think you can follow the English, so I'm going to read it in Delasan. So it says, Faitu kino penjuir wareno gamgam ertali alen, ertami ertali evete erdamudir, avlevan, avlesutin, avlesoton, avlepahir. I am, of course, the #1 translator in this language. The joke is basically I was terrible at poetry. My dad is a poet and a published poet, and so I kind of made up my own language, the joke goes. The second project is a lot closer to my heart, and this is the Palisra project. And just maybe a bit of a trigger warning, this is related to current events in some way, although this effort had started about 20-something years ago, in fact, at the height of the, let's say, good old days when people in Palestine and Israel were talking with each other and considering solutions for the situation post-Oslo. I was a young man at a university, and I really was hopeful. We had friends from both sides talking with each other and trying to imagine things. And this Palisra project was kind of an artistic exploration of the one-state idea. So often you hear in the news about the two-state solution, the two states living next to each other, which is not working right now, and many people think is doomed. This was a counter idea. It's in the minority for sure, but I felt that when we were talking about it all the time, we were always talking about it in a very kind of legalistic way. It's like, how many members in the parliament? Who represents what? How are we going to divide the budget? How we'll do whatever? And I thought, well, if you're going to actually have a country like this, the day after that you're going to have a civil war, and it's all going to go to hell. That's not really good. Can we imagine something better, right? Again, art projects, I don't have a militia trying to impose anything here, so no worries of any kind. And the idea was to try to take different concepts, narratives that coexist in the two sides and try to consolidate them with each other to create kind of a shared identity, a soul, if you may, for such a nation. And this is easy for outsiders to see, but for those of us in Israel and Palestine in the middle of it, it's really hard emotionally. It was a very intense process where I had to force myself to learn a lot about the other side, learn about how they see the world, and try to see if I can integrate something from that. And what I found in the process, which I really found amazing artistically, is that some ideas just emerged that I didn't even expect. I was going for it maybe a bit rationally, even in approaching that project, the emotional project, so to speak, and I discovered some interesting emergent beauty that comes out. I'll show you some examples in a bit. I should also point out, this is not funded by anybody. It's completely my own time, my own money, and of course, art. There's no art that is apolitical. Art is political by nature, and maybe the political idea here is that maybe we should be talking with each other and learning about each other to imagine better things. So it's about imaginations and dreaming. So we started with the name, and the name is Palisra. It's made out of the names of the two countries. And as you can imagine, there's many different ways you can organize them. And this was the way I could get some sharedness. So Palisra is the name of this imagined country. Some foreigners typically think I'm saying Palestra, which is Greek, in Greek mythology, the daughter of Hermes, credited with the invention of the art of wrestling for men to entertain themselves during the times of peace. And I thought that's actually kind of cool, that the name happened to evoke that imagery. Other things I looked at is, for example, the flags. There are many, many different ways. There are many different flags that appear on the website. This was kind of one that I like that imagines a way of interpreting the different meanings of the elements of the flag. Created money notes, called it zahabas, comes from the Arabic dhahab and the Hebrew zahav, and you get a zahaba, and I printed fake money also. Maybe one day it'll be useful. And then there were also some pieces that were pushing the emotional element a bit more, taking a yarmulke, which is extremely marking of what it means to be a Jewish man, and a kufiya, extreme marking what it means to be a Palestinian, and kind of joining them together in some way. And, I thought some things look pretty, but very confusing, right? But that's maybe why as one state idea is confusing. Same thing with taking a talit and a hatta. Hatta is one of the words for kufiya. In Arabic, in Palestinian Arabic, and you end up with these details that emerge. Like, who would have thunk that if you put the little square at the edge, it fits nicely there? And I thought that was interesting. Just opening that door of imagination allows us to see something that we're not expecting at all. Other things I tried, things like taking the elements of the mezuzah, which on practicing Jewish homes you would find on the door. It has the Shema prayer, which is the declaration of monotheism at the heart of Judaism. That's the same as the declaration of monotheism in Islam in the Surah of Fidelity, or Surah Al-Ikhlas. So I combined the two with each other, managing to offend two major religions with each other at the same time. The point, I hope, is more elegant than some other anti-religious work. This is far from it. Played a bit of food, matzah and za'atar, works out. Gefilte fish and tahini didn't work out. So there's probably a lot of ideas there to explore in that space. And of course, you say, where is the language? Of course, there's a language, and it's called Palisri. Older name was Semiti. Some people thought I was talking about a Proto-Semitic. I'm not. It's something imaginative in the future. So constructing Palisri was interesting. I used my linguistic skills and my computational skills, identified the phonology as a compromise between all of the options that are available to me, simplified Arabic emphatics, dropped the bigat kafat allophones in Hebrew, even tried a font. It's publicly available if you want to play with it. Grammar was easy. The two languages have very similar syntax, so that was actually not hard. Morphology was hard because it's complex in both. I ended up going the Chinese way and chopped a lot of things out and simplified it. And then there was a dictionary of about 2,000 words that I created from combining dictionaries that exist for Arabic and Hebrew, and Arabic English and Hebrew and English. And I just basically looked at edit distance measures to find things beyond the obvious of pairs of words. This was the most fascinating part. It took a lot of time because I went through and checked all of the options that were coming out. In the process, I ended up learning a lot about both Arabic and Hebrew. Oddly, I mean Hebrew because it's not my native language, but Arabic also because there's many words in Hebrew that actually are connected to older forms in classical Arabic that are not used anymore, but you would find them in Arabic dictionaries, right, if you look for them. So this was kind of interesting. Again, another surprise of kind of following your heart and exploring things. I'll give you some examples of the language. The number one word was salom instead of salam and shalom. Ahava instead of hub and ahava. Kaif, same in both. You notice the light-hearted mood. Life is crappy enough, so I went for light-hearted things. Words like nana or mint. And then this was a bit of a God, Allah, Elohim, Allahim. And then you get cutesy word, if you want to use it. Habubala, combination of habub, which is like darling in Arabic, and bubala, which actually is Yiddish. It's not Hebrew, but works. So I tried to play with all of these things. I'll give you a couple of examples of this language. So this is a Palisra prayer designed to open with the traditional opening of Jewish prayers. Then there is a Christian thematic line, and then there is the Muslim, the ending. People from the different religions, you'll recognize what I'm talking about. So it starts with Barukata Allahim, Abanu hal bisamayin, hal Rahman hal Rahim, Malik Yom hal Din, Ilah Ahad le'olamin. So just kind of a nice way of combining them. Another example, which is emotional for me to read every time, is the Song of Palisra, and it goes like this. أناوتا نحن أخين لأرض قدوسك كلنا بنين من الأردن لها اليم للو إسرائيل للو فلسطين سما بلسرا مدينة أحدا مبروكا من اللهم لهيا بسلام لهيا بلدين. I'll leave the English translations for you. All these resources are online. Check them out. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Now, the last part of how do I combine all of this? I actually get paid to do this. It's kind of fascinating how I managed to pull that through. So in New York University Abu Dhabi, I teach two courses. One is natural language processing, and the other one is an introductory course for general student public. It's called a core course. And it's a light introduction to linguistics called Words is the name of the course. And in it, I actually convinced the university to allow me to have a Conlang construction class. Now, the NYU Abu Dhabi students are a really interesting breed because they come from all over the world. We literally have people, I've taught once where I think out of 15 students, there were 14 different native languages. You don't find that in most universities around the world. And that means when you put them together in groups, they have to actually self-reflect on their own languages, on their understanding of English, compromise and come up with ideas with each other, which is an incredible experience that I really benefited from seeing them struggle with. The example, this is actually literally what they get as the requirement for the course. You can work in groups of 3 or 4. You have to first construct a context. There has to be a culture, a place, and a time, and a story, and a struggle of some sort. This is not just language out of context. And then you have to start writing the grammar, bottom up, top down, whichever way you want, make it work, design the orthography, the phonology, the morphology. You have to have a lexicon of at least 250 words in it, and then you have to create artifacts, and you have to perform the artifacts. So all the students at the end, we have a festival celebrating all of the created languages, and they present their work, and they have all of their reports are public online, are available through the website of the course. I love my students. This is the group from 2016. They created fantastic looking languages. Almost all of them went for creating their own writing systems, which I also teach them how to do font design, etc. But this one was kind of fun. It was called Beastalk. It's peace talk, but it's like an Esperanto in the global age where we look at the 6 languages of the UN instead of just European languages like Esperanto did. And Arabic does not have a P, and Chinese doesn't have an L, so those are lost, and you go from P-stock to B-stock is the name of the language. From the 2017 group, also many interesting languages. This was my favorite by far, called Gada, a language reflecting superiority of women. And the whole group was women, of course. I love my students. And they argued, well, why can't the base form of everything be the feminine, and then we inflect for the boys, right? I'm okay, let's try it. So that's kind of what they ended up creating, a language where women are at the center and men are on the periphery. I mean, it's sexist in other ways, but an interesting mental exercise. The 2018 bunch, my favorite project was called Samisini, and I'll read, it says, it's a language of reindeer herding North Norwegian tribe whose ancestry includes China-seeking Arab merchants. A bunch of Arabs thought they're going to China by going west, like others. They got lost and went north and then settled down and created a new subculture, a tribe, and they played with really interesting thing of mixing Arabic and Norwegian. And then the last year I taught this was before COVID, and then we had the huge increase in computer science attendance, so I had to switch to teaching computer science primarily. But this was my favorite from that year. It's called Quechua-Simi, and it's a language that imagines if the Inca actually defeated the Spanish, and used the technology they learned from the defeat of the Spanish, and they became the world power, what would their language look like, right? So it was just fascinating. Anyway, so I'm gonna finish. I think I'm hopefully not keeping people away from their lunch with a couple of parting thoughts. So back to language and home. I know a lot of young people tell me about their anxiety these days about big LLMs, what's going on, what will happen in our future, what are you going to do? And I don't really have any specific advice to give at that specific level, right? Other than to say, you really have to stay anchored. Ask yourself, why did you get into this field? What was their main purpose to getting in this field? You know, what drives you? Have faith in your abilities to start with. You know, keep learning. These technologies are incredible and they're useful. And I've been having a lot of fun working with them together because I still have an interest. Like, oh, can it solve this problem? Good, let's go to the next one, right? There's always something else, right? So don't dishearten yourself by basically thinking all is over, woe is me. That never works for anybody. Stay optimistic. Pessimism is really its own self-fulfilling prophecy at times. You don't want that. Keep longing and keep dreaming, because that's extremely important to be able to survive life, careers, etc. Now, the last thing I'll also say, if you allow me, because people asked me a few times, I'm Palestinian. I have lost family in Gaza. In fact, in this last war, 9 people were killed within the first few weeks. I still have family in Gaza who are able to get out. And I just want to say, you know, keep us in your prayers and your mind that this war ends, and maybe ceasefire now, free Palestine, free all hostages on both sides, and right of return to all. Arabs and Jews do not have to be enemies. Muslims and Jews do not have to be enemies. I think we can make something wonderful, wonderful in this place. And thank you very much. Time to go to lunch.
Even though we are moved by his last words. Questions?
If you have any questions, please, yes. I think there's David over there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nizar. Great talk and about all your resources and vision. I wanted to ask you about the invented languages, and if you thought that this exercise of inventing these new languages and circumstances gives you more insight on some of the historical changes in language and probably what didn't happen as much as what did.
That's a fantastic question. Of course, absolutely yes, particularly in the Palisra project, because I had a big restriction on me, which was that I have to work with 2 real-world languages, whereas the first project, I had complete freedom to just make up things as I went and kind of try to be consistent. So I definitely started noticing a lot of interesting patterns and also violations of those patterns as part of this process. Also things that were really fascinating, like a bit confusing actually, but in a pleasant way. For example, the Hebrew Mizrahi pronunciation of the hat is a ha. It's actually cognate of the Arabic kha, but the Ashkenazi pronunciation, which supposedly breaks from the traditional Mizrahi one, actually brings it closer to Arabic. So it's not always necessarily, you know, so akhi for my brother is actually how you would say it in Ashkenazi and Arabic, but not in the Mizrahi. So those kind of little things were kind of surprising in an interesting way. Just I think the number of possibilities of things linking with each other is really fascinating. Yeah. I think it's a question there.
So in the process of inventing a language, did you consider inventing idiomatic expressions too?
Idiomatic expressions, yes, of course. The problem with idiomatic expressions, as you know, is that they're extremely specific to the culture and particular interpretations. There were a number of things that I found between the two languages that were already kind of either naturally in coexistence with each other, but like one of them that was actually funny, it happens to sound the same. It's an idiomatic construction in both languages. It was like, I feel like is bali, which in Hebrew is actually a verb with a preposition, but in Arabic it comes from the word bal, which is like in my mind. So sometimes there were some felicitous kind of pairings that I stumbled upon. I think I tried to be careful when I pair things to actually also not make it too opaque in doing the design. But you know, the thing is, I mean, it's an interesting exercise, but a language needs speakers, and the moment they start using it, they're changing it. I've actually had people contact me about creating teaching material for Palisra, and they would create stuff and I would, you know, revise it and kind of give them feedback. So there is kind of a small community of people who are interested in this. But again, it's just an artistic, as one of my colleagues call it, it's a nice conversational piece to get people slowly into the discussion about the bigger things. Oh, I think there's one there.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering whether you considered looking for a collaborator who spoke Hebrew as a native language, for example, and creating this language.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So in the first initial parts of actually starting to work on Palisra, actually, the older name was Semitish. Some of you may recognize it, know about this. I did have an Israeli colleague who happened to be the Hebrew professor that I had worked with when I took Hebrew during my graduate school period. And we spent a lot of time talking about this. But I think she kind of made some suggestions in the beginning, and then we went in different parts, and I just kind of kept going with it. And it became more of a computational problem solution fascination, and I wanted to continue learning the language itself and work on it. So unfortunately, it was at the beginning. Finding a right person to gel with is hard. I would love to have a partner to play with this and give me feedback, of course. Anybody interested, reach out, let me know. Yep.
So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Let me announce the next
Yes, please.
And at 2:40, there is the Italian local talk. It's a tradition at LREC introduced, I think, at LREC in Malta, to have a talk on the local language, this time Italian. See you soon.